The courtroom erupts in laughter as the judge mocks Elon Musk, but seconds later, silence falls. Because Musk is about to unleash a legal masterstroke that will leave everyone, including the judge, completely stunned. Stay till the end to witness how he turns the case upside down with sheer genius. The courtroom buzzed with restless anticipation. Mahogany benches gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, and the air was thick with murmurs, whispers of curiosity, skepticism, and in some corners, outright amusement. This wasn't just any trial. It was a high-profile legal battle that had the world's eyes locked on it. At the center of it all stood Elon Musk, a name synonymous with innovation, rebellion, and an unshakable belief in his own vision. Dressed in a crisp navy suit, he sat at the defendant's table, his fingers loosely interlocked, his expression unreadable. His sharp blue-gray eyes flickered with an intensity that belied the casual ease of his posture. Opposite him, the prosecution smirked. Richard Calloway, a seasoned corporate attorney with decades of experience, adjusted his tie and leaned toward his junior colleague, whispering something that made them both chuckle. He wasn't just confident, he was convinced this was a done deal. After all, how could a tech mogul, no matter how brilliant, outmaneuver the system? And then there was the judge, Judge William Prescott, a stern but fair man in his late 50s, known for his sharp wit and no-nonsense approach. His piercing gaze swept across the room before he let out a small chuckle. "Mr. Musk," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I hope you're not planning on launching a rocket in here to win this case." Laughter erupted across the room. Even the jury members smirked. But Musk? He simply smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Because while everyone in the room thought they had already won, they had no idea what was coming. The courtroom's laughter faded into an air of anticipation as Judge William Prescott cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "All right, let's get down to business," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Prosecution, you may proceed." Richard Calloway stood, buttoning his expensive charcoal gray suit jacket, the kind that screamed authority and power. He walked toward the jury with the slow, calculated confidence of a man who had been in this position 1,000 times before. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "we are here today because Mr. Musk believes he is above the law. That rules don't apply to men with billions of dollars and the world at their feet. But in this courtroom, money, power, and celebrity mean nothing." He turned sharply, pointing a deliberate finger toward Musk. "Here, the truth is what matters. And the truth is, Mr. Musk knowingly misled investors, manipulating stock values for his own gain." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. The press, lined up along the back wall, scribbled furiously in their notepads and tapped at their keyboards. But Elon Musk? He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on Calloway with an expression of mild amusement, as if he were watching a well-rehearsed play he had already seen a dozen times before. Calloway continued, his voice rising for effect. "Ladies and gentlemen, when a man tweets," he paused dramatically, turning toward the jury, "when a man tweets funding secured, he sends shockwaves through the financial world. People invest. People trust. And when that trust is built on deception, we must ask ourselves, is he a genius, or is he a manipulator?" Judge Prescott raised an eyebrow. He had heard many cases in his years on the bench, but there was something particularly entertaining about this one. Perhaps it was the sheer confidence of the defense. Or maybe it was the fact that Musk had chosen to represent himself. That's right. No high-powered legal team. No army of lawyers. Just him. And that was why the room was packed with journalists, financial analysts, and everyday citizens who had come to witness what many expected to be a disaster. "Mr. Musk," Judge Prescott finally said, tilting his head, "you've chosen to represent yourself in this case. Do you wish to make an opening statement?" Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he adjusted his tie, exhaled slowly, and finally stood. A hush fell over the courtroom. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his gaze unwavering. Then, in a calm, measured tone, he spoke. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he paused, allowing the silence to stretch, forcing them to hang on to his next words. I do not believe in wasting time. A flicker of surprise crossed Calloway's face. This was unconventional. The prosecution wants you to believe that I am a villain, that I acted with malicious intent. Musk's voice remained steady, unwavering. But I ask you this, have you ever said something with full belief, only to have the world misunderstand you? A few jury members exchanged glances. My life, Musk continued, has been built on a singular principle, innovation. That requires boldness, vision, and yes, sometimes, risk. I do not apologize for that. His gaze swept over the courtroom. The world sees what I build. What they don't see is the battles I fight behind the scenes. The legal challenges, the media scrutiny, the people who would rather tear down than build up. And this case? This case is about more than a tweet. He turned and faced the jury directly. It is about whether we punish visionaries for dreaming too big. Silence. For the first time since the trial began, Calloway's smirk faded. And Judge Prescott? He studied Musk with newfound curiosity. Because, suddenly, this wasn't just a courtroom spectacle anymore. It was a battle of wits. And Elon Musk had just made his first move. A low hum of intrigue filled the courtroom. The judge, initially amused, now regarded Musk with a more analytical gaze. The jury, previously leaning toward the prosecution's narrative, shifted in their seats. It wasn't just what Musk had said, but how he had said it. There was an undeniable magnetism in his words. But Richard Calloway wasn't a man easily shaken. He straightened his tie, forcing a smirk back onto his face. That was a compelling speech, Mr. Musk, he said, stepping forward. But this is a court of law, not a TED Talk. Laughter rippled through the audience again, but this time it was thinner, less certain. Calloway's voice sharpened. Let's talk about facts. On August 7th, you tweeted, and I quote, "AM considering taking Tesla private at $420. Funding secured." He turned to the jury, holding up a printed copy of the infamous tweet. Now, Mr. Musk, can you confirm that this was your tweet? Musk nodded, hands still in his pockets. Yep. Calloway chuckled dryly. So, then you admit to publicly announcing a financial decision that significantly impacted the stock market? Musk tilted his head. I admit to sharing an idea. But since when is thinking illegal? The prosecution bench tensed. Judge Prescott sighed. Mr. Musk, please answer the question directly. Musk exhaled. Fine. Yes, I tweeted that. And yes, I believed it at the time. Calloway seized the moment. You believed it? He repeated mockingly. Tell me, Mr. Musk, did you have actual funding secured, or was this just another one of your visionary moments? Musk's face remained unreadable. Funding was discussed with investors. The intention was real. Calloway pounced. But the funding wasn't actually secured, was it? The pause. Musk met Calloway's gaze. Not in the way you mean. The prosecution attorney grinned as if he had just cornered his prey. Thank you, Mr. Musk. That's all I needed to hear. He turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is deception, plain and simple. A man with his influence doesn't just discuss funding and throw it into the public sphere without consequence. The jury murmured again. Musk leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Calloway, have you ever built a billion-dollar company? The question was so unexpected that Calloway faltered for half a second. Excuse me? I'm asking, Musk continued, if you've ever taken the risk of creating something that the world doubted, if you've ever made decisions in an environment where uncertainty is a daily reality. Calloway scoffed. That's irrelevant. Musk shrugged. It's everything. Because when you operate on a level where the future is uncertain, you don't get the luxury of absolute guarantees. You plan, you strategize, you push forward. And sometimes, that means communicating your intentions before the ink is dry. He turned to the jury. Do you think SpaceX would exist today if I had waited for every contract to be signed before announcing our vision? Or Tesla? Or Neuralink? Innovation requires movement, not bureaucracy. A few jury members shifted uncomfortably. Judge Prescott tapped his gavel lightly. Let's keep this within the confines of the law, Mr. Musk. Musk nodded. Of course, Your Honor. But something had changed in the room. The balance of power was shifting. Richard Callaway, though rattled, wasn't done. Fine, he said, regaining control. Let's move past the philosophy and talk hard evidence. He walked back to the prosecution table and pulled out a thick stack of documents. The SEC investigated your tweet. In fact, they found that not only was funding not secured, but Tesla's board had no knowledge of your plan before you tweeted it. He held up a report. Your own CFO, Deepak Ahuja, testified that the board was caught off guard by your announcement. Is he lying, Mr. Musk? Musk sighed, rubbing his forehead. Deepak is a great guy, but he and I interpret caught off guard differently. Callaway smirked. So, your own team wasn't aware of this plan, and yet, you expect us to believe that funding was secure? Musk exhaled through his nose. The Saudi Public Investment Fund had expressed strong interest. Discussions were real. If anything, the SEC's definition of secured is flawed. Callaway shook his head, turning dramatically toward the jury. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. A man who plays with words as easily as he plays with billions of dollars. Is this the kind of visionary the law should excuse? A murmur spread again. For the first time, Musk frowned. Because, despite his confidence, Callaway had landed a hit. Just as the tension in the room peaked, Musk's defense team, consisting of precisely one legal assistant, a young woman named Natalie Carter, leaned in and whispered something to him. Musk's eyes flickered with interest. He nodded. Standing up, he addressed the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness. Judge Prescott raised a brow. A witness? You didn't list any witnesses. Musk smirked. Well, this is a last-minute innovation. Callaway threw up his hands. This is absurd. But the judge sighed, intrigued. I'll allow it. Who's the witness? Musk's eyes gleamed. Patrick O'Connor, former Tesla investor and financial analyst. A tall man with silver hair and a crisp navy suit walked into the courtroom. Callaway's face dropped. Musk leaned back, satisfied. Because Patrick O'Connor wasn't just any investor. He was a whistleblower, one who knew secrets that could flip the entire case upside down. And suddenly, the prosecution wasn't laughing anymore. The courtroom fell into an uneasy silence as Patrick O'Connor took the witness stand. The air was thick with tension, a silent acknowledgement that the trial was about to take an unexpected turn. Richard Callaway, for the first time, looked genuinely unsettled. He hadn't prepared for this. Judge Prescott peered over his glasses. Mr. O'Connor, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Patrick replied, his voice calm but firm. Musk leaned forward, adjusting his cuff. His expression was unreadable, but the slightest curve of a smirk hinted at his confidence. Mr. O'Connor, Musk began, can you tell the court about your role in Tesla during the time of the funding secured tweet? Patrick nodded. I was a financial analyst overseeing private investment discussions. I was aware of negotiations Musk had with foreign investors, including representatives from the Saudi Public Investment Fund. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Musk's voice remained steady. Were these discussions serious? Patrick took a slow breath. Yes. The Saudis were prepared to invest heavily. In fact, they had verbally agreed to the deal. The only reason things didn't move forward was due to government regulations and last-minute disagreements on control. Richard Callaway shot up from his seat. Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. Judge Prescott considered for a moment. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Musk. Musk turned back to Patrick. Did you ever feel at any point that my tweet was intended to mislead investors? Patrick shook his head. No. Elon genuinely believed the deal would go through. I was in meetings where it was discussed as an imminent possibility. Callaway clenched his jaw. His case, which had seemed airtight hours ago, was unraveling before his eyes. Musk stepped back. No further questions. Judge Prescott turned to Callaway. Would the prosecution like to cross-examine? Callaway rose, but his usual confidence was gone. Mr. O'Connor, he started, isn't it true that a verbal agreement isn't the same as funding secured? Patrick met his gaze. That depends on how you define secured. In the business world, deals happen through conversations long before paperwork is finalized. Calloway exhaled sharply. He was losing the jury. He could feel it. Calloway took a step back, his mind racing. He had one last card to play. He turned back to Musk. Mr. Musk, let's forget the funding for a moment. Let's talk about intent. The truth is, you knew exactly what you were doing when you posted that tweet, didn't you? Musk arched an eyebrow. I always know what I'm doing. Calloway pounced. And what you were doing was manipulating Tesla's stock, wasn't it? You knew a tweet like that would send shares skyrocketing. Musk exhaled. Tesla's stock moves whenever I tweet anything. If I post a picture of my dog, the stock moves. Should I be held accountable for that too? Laughter rippled through the audience. Even Judge Prescott had to suppress a smirk. But Calloway wasn't done. Let's cut to the heart of this case, Mr. Musk. You believe in pushing boundaries, correct? Musk nodded. Always. And you believe that sometimes rules need to be bent in order to innovate? Musk's expression darkened slightly. I believe that outdated rules sometimes stand in the way of progress. Calloway seized the moment. Then isn't it fair to say that you knowingly bent the truth in order to push your own agenda? Silence. This was the moment. The jury, the press, the entire courtroom waited for Musk's response. He looked at Calloway, then at Judge Prescott, and finally at the jury. Then he spoke. I won't deny it, Musk said slowly. I push boundaries. Always have. And I don't apologize for that. Calloway smirked, thinking he had won. But Musk wasn't done. The real question, Musk continued, is why I push boundaries. If I wanted to manipulate stocks for personal gain, I wouldn't have spent the last 20 years reinvesting every dime I make into companies that change the world. He took a step closer to the jury box. I don't build businesses to make money. I make money to build businesses. Businesses that solve problems humanity refuses to address. His voice was steady, unwavering. So yes, I push. I challenge. But never to deceive, only to create. The courtroom was dead silent. Then Musk turned back to Calloway. So, tell me, Mr. Calloway, what have you built? Calloway's lips pressed into a thin line. He had no answer. Musk let the silence stretch before turning to Judge Prescott. I rest my case. Judge Prescott exhaled, rubbing his temples. He had seen many trials, but none quite like this. The jury had a decision to make. And for the first time in the trial, it was no longer clear what that decision would be. The jury had been deliberating for hours. Inside the courtroom, tension weighed heavy in the air. The press whispered among themselves, speculating on whether Musk had just talked his way into an acquittal or dug his own grave. Musk, however, remained composed. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his face unreadable. Across the room, Richard Calloway sat stiffly, his once confident smirk long gone. He knew that despite his best efforts, Musk had done what he always did, turn the impossible into the inevitable. Finally, the jury re-entered. Judge Prescott adjusted his glasses. Has the jury reached a verdict? A woman in her mid-40s, the jury foreperson, stood and nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The entire courtroom held its breath. She unfolded a sheet of paper, her voice steady. In the case of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission versus Elon Musk, on the charge of securities fraud, we find the defendant. The pause. Musk didn't blink. Not guilty. A wave of murmurs and gasps filled the room. Some gasped in shock, others in celebration. Musk allowed himself the slightest smile. His legal team, consisting mostly of his assistant Natalie Carter, let out an audible exhale of relief. Judge Prescott banged his gavel. Order in the court. He turned to Musk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Musk, the jury has found you not guilty. However, let me remind you that the influence you wield comes with an immense responsibility. This court expects you to exercise it with wisdom. Musk gave a respectful nod. Duly noted, Your Honor. With that, the judge adjourned the case. As Musk stood up, cameras flashed wildly. Reporters pushed forward, desperate for a statement. Mr. Musk, how do you feel about the verdict? Was this just another lucky escape? What do you say to critics who claim you manipulated the system? Musk turned to face them, his expression cool. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Never bet against me. With that, he strode out, leaving the courtroom buzzing. Meanwhile, Richard Calloway sat motionless at his table, his face blank. This was supposed to be his defining moment, the case that would cement his reputation as the man who took down Elon Musk. Instead, Musk had outmaneuvered him. Not with deception, but with vision. Calloway exhaled, gathering his papers. Maybe he'd underestimated the billionaire. Or maybe, just maybe, Musk really did see the world differently. Outside the courthouse, Natalie Carter, Musk's fiercely loyal assistant, walked beside him. That was a gamble, she said. Calling Patrick O'Connor at the last minute? That could have backfired. Musk smirked. Life's more fun when you take risks. She shook her head, unable to suppress a smile. And now what? Back to Mars? He glanced up at the sky, eyes glinting with something indescribable. Not yet. He turned back to her. First, we have an AI revolution to finish. Natalie chuckled. Of course we do. As they reached the car, Musk paused. The weight of the trial, the stress, the scrutiny, it should have exhausted him. But instead, he felt energized. Because if this case had proved anything, it was that the world still didn't understand him. And that meant there was still so much more to build. The sun was setting over Silicon Valley, casting golden hues over Tesla's headquarters. Elon Musk stood at the rooftop terrace, a rare moment of solitude before diving back into his endless pursuit of progress. The trial was over. The media storm would rage on for weeks, but Musk had never been one to dwell on public opinion. The only thing that mattered was what came next. Natalie Carter approached him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. I figured you could use this, she said, handing him one. Musk accepted it with a nod. He took a sip and let the quiet moment linger before speaking. You ever wonder why people are so desperate to see me fail? Natalie exhaled, leaning on the railing. You challenge the system, Elon. People either admire that, or fear it. Musk smirked. Or both. She glanced at him. Does it ever bother you? He was silent for a moment, watching the distant city lights flicker on. No, he finally said. Because every great innovation, the light bulb, the telephone, the internet, was met with resistance. Change threatens those who benefit from the status quo. And the bigger the change, the stronger the resistance. He turned to her, his gaze sharp. They want me to play it safe. To think small. But I won't. Because the moment I do, humanity stops moving forward. Natalie studied him, then smiled. And what's next for humanity? Musk set his cup down and grinned. Mars. But sustainable energy. Fixing traffic. He paused. And maybe, finally getting some sleep. She laughed. Yeah, right. Across the country, Richard Calloway watched Musk's post-trial interview on the news. I don't build businesses to make money. I make money to build businesses, businesses that solve problems humanity refuses to address. Calloway sighed, rubbing his temple. He had spent months preparing to bring Musk down. And yet, sitting here now, he felt something unexpected. Respect. Not for the way Musk operated. Calloway still believed he pushed boundaries too recklessly. But for the simple fact that Musk never stopped pushing. And maybe, just maybe, the world needed people like that. Elon Musk's Courtroom victory wasn't just a legal win. It was a testament to vision, perseverance, and challenging the impossible. The world is full of people who will try to limit you, control you, and define your path. Some do it out of fear. Others out of envy. But true innovators? They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for approval. They build, create, and push forward, no matter the odds. Musk didn't walk away from this trial unscathed. He knew the scrutiny wouldn't stop. He knew the battles ahead would be just as fierce. But he also knew one simple truth. The future belongs to those bold enough to create it. And Elon Musk? He wasn't done creating. The next time you face resistance, the next time someone tells you, that's impossible, Ask yourself this. Are you going to let them define your limits? Or are you going to prove them wrong?